Hi, everyone. It's Joseph back with iConixxx. And you know what? iConixxx continues to get more and more juicy and more amazing every week. Thank you for tuning in and thank you for watching. Make sure you watch all of the documentaries. They all have a purpose. They all have a meaning, and they will somehow leave you wanting to have paper and pen behind. As I always say, you should always have paper and pen when you're watching this, because you never know when someone like our host this evening, afternoon, wherever you are, actually will want to share a book maybe, or a motivational something. So I'm really thankful that you're watching this right now, and I'm going to turn this over to one of my most amazing friends in this industry, and she's becoming like my sister from another mother, Chris Sorby, and I'll leave it up to Chris Sorby to introduce our fabulous icon today.
All right.
Chris, how are you, Chris?
Hi, everyone. Great to know that you're in the room, and even better that you'll be watching this in our library one day on YouTube, our YouTube channel, which is iConixxx Live. And I am pretty emotional tonight, actually, because the man that I'm going to introduce you to is someone that I've known for about 35 years. He's a visionary hairstylist. He's won more awards than most hairdressers I know, collectively. His breathtaking work has graced the covers of every prestigious magazine. He's appeared on many TV shows, including Tabitha's Salon Makeover and America's Next Top Model. He's an incredible educator and stylist to the stars. I'm so proud to call him my friend. Please meet Damien Carney.
Hello.
Yeah.
Welcome,
Joseph. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. A perfect way of spending a beautiful evening in New York, at home for me, with you guys and everybody else.
Wow.
Very cool.
I feel like we have so much that we're going to get from this young man.
Oh, trust me. He's absolutely incredible, and still only looks 25. That's what's really intriguing, you know.
25.
But Damien, I'm gonna ask you, which living person do you most admire and why?
Well, there's a few, but I'm going to, at this moment in time with what's going on, essential workers.
Oh, thank you.
You know, if there are other things that come to mind. It might be a politician, it might be a musician, it might be a hairdresser. But in this day in my life, I'm very much, want to shout out to the essential workers, because basically what they do every day for everybody is allow us to somewhat continue our life in this very traumatic, difficult times. And whether people are working or they're not working, we can eat, we can visit a doctor, we can, whatever we need, we have got. There are people that are working around the clock. And for me, it is the essential workers that I really want to thank. And without them, we would be very much in a lot more trouble.
Oh, absolutely. Ditto that.
Beautiful, beautiful answer.
No, it is, because we forget. I think, we've all got our learning lessons from what's happened with the time that we've been at home, or maybe with our business. But we need reminding of the contributions everybody has and their roles they play in society and in their own lives. And we can forget all those things that we take for granted. I know that I have. And for me, I just want to, shout it out for them, and God bless them all, because I can sleep at night, I can eat, and I'm in a safe place, and I know that they're taking very good care of us, and that is magical.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! That was a good answer, buddy. Oh. A+ on that one.
Well, A+ for them.
I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Damien, hang on here a minute, because I need to take you probably if you are in your 20s, probably not that far back, but let me just ask you, I've got students in my world, right? And, they have been Googling you. They've been researching you. They see all your things. And you know what? They think they can do that tomorrow. So they're going to be doing this tomorrow. So I want you to do me a favor. Where did this all start? Where did you go to school? And what inspired you to start cosmetology school, hairdressing?
Okay, rewind. I'm one of 8 kids, third youngest, 5 boys, 3 girls. I watch my elder brothers and sisters start work and careers. You know, they're pretty good. And an engineer, a PA to a company at a bank, or whatever. But what I'd noticed, there was a pattern with all of them. 3 or 4 years later into their career, they were bored. They were bored with the routine and their career prospects and everything else. They almost wished they'd have chosen something else, but they didn't have the courage to do so. So that to me was my learning lesson without consciously thinking about it. It was just around me. I've always been interested in fashion, always been interested, like most hairdressers. I think our stories are all quite similar in some degrees. But I was fascinated by getting my haircut, at the barbers. Then it was the 70s. It was the unisex salon where both guys and girls could go into a brown salon with, gold or chrome and have any service and walk out and looking feeling good, right? I was one of them. So I was a paper boy when I was 10. At 12, I was delivering bread with a guy who drove a van. Then I worked in a butcher shop for 4 years. So I was always working. It was always instilled in me, like a lot of people. So that grounded me. I went to hairdressing school, college. A lot of people were against it. My career advisor advised me not to do it. For whatever reason, we won't really kind of go there. It wasn't looked upon as being a great career. I was very adamant. I hated school. I couldn't wait to get out there. And I really wanted to get my hands into something that I knew I'd love. And that never stopped. So I went to a beauty school in Birmingham, UK, not Birmingham, Alabama. And there's nothing wrong with Birmingham, Alabama, still an amazing place. Yes. Birmingham's the next largest city to London. So it's about an hour and a half, an hour and 45 on a train. It was where I grew up. And I went on a 2-year program. It was a full-time program, mostly girls. In fact, there was only 2 guys. And the other guy that I was with, he dropped out. So, of course, I was like, teacher's pet. And, I got the exception. I didn't take advantage of that. I would do anything. I was very blessed with some great teachers that were there. There were just times when they gave me a hug and, things that didn't go well. There's always those things in your life that make a huge difference and make you grow right. And that's what we all do. That's what tonight's about. Fast forward a little bit, 2 years into it, I wanted to make sure the learning that I was learning at school, because at school, everybody thinks that you learn and you go away and you're qualified. No, you don't. You learn lots of different things. And what you do, wig making, waves, pin curls, setting, coloring, everything, it gives you the gamut. Then what you do is leave college or school, and then you decide on when you want to continue your education, what really inspires you. I remember the first show that I did assisting a big name hairdresser was in Runway, and I had to do finger waves and pin curls, and I was actually pretty good at them. And thank God I learned them at college, because I never thought I'd use them, and I did, and it was a big name designer. So it's taking that information. Yeah.
You know what? If I had a highlighter right now, Damien, if I had a highlighter, I'd be highlighting your whole last. I'm going to replay that 9 times tomorrow morning at the Academy. They need to know that.
I think, absolutely. There are times, but it's big. I'm older now, mature, and I look back in it a different way. These experiences, these golden nuggets or opportunities, call them what you like, that literally can, come to you. So what I did is I then, while I was at school, I wanted to make sure that I was nailed whatever I could, whether it was cutting, coloring. So I got myself a job as a Saturday boy. And on Saturdays, I would be shampoo and I would do whatever. I cleaned the toilet, I cleaned everything, whatever was asked of me. But I navigated myself to develop, and I had a goal. And my goal was, when I left that college, I would be a stylist at that salon when I left. Now, I did eventually do that, but I required more training. So while I was at college, there was training nights on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night at the salon. So I did that through the whole 2 years. So I thought what it did is the college gave me a brilliant foundation to all of the things that hair has to offer. The unisex salon, which was in the city centre, quite a well-known salon at that time, and I only worked there on a Saturday, and I was doing trainings, melded those together. So it was the theory, the practice, the reality of working in an everyday salon. Anyway, I was there for 4 or 5 years. Eventually, I hit the floor, achieved my goal. And then there's a magazine called Hairdressers Journal, which is basically a big magazine in the UK. It's been, you know, the kind of vogue of trade magazines. Well, there was a thing going on called the Weller Vogue. And it was the Weller Vogue, Weller, the hair care company, and Vogue magazine were doing a photographic competition, very similar to NAHA, or like the British Hairdressing Awards that we have today. It no longer runs. And there was a presentation. So I actually entered it, and I got into the finalist. And there was quite a number of us. I had to bring my model, and she had to do a walk and everything else. But what really blew me away was not just that, but there was special presentations by Michael John, Trevor Sorby, the iconic Trevor Sorby, and a few others. And Trevor in particular blew me away. Out came his models. I think the presentation lasted all of about 10, 15 minutes. And basically what happened with that 8 to 10, 15 minutes, the hair on my hands stood up. And I said to myself, I don't know what that guy has done with hair. I don't completely understand it because I don't have his brain or his vision, but I know I need to go and work for him. So I wrote him a letter, actually got my friend who was training as a lawyer to help me put a great letter together. Trevor was really impressed with it. It wasn't my work, I cheated, but I put my signature on it and my friend helped me do, it's in lasting impressions. At that time, you wrote a letter, you got a reply, and it had Trevor Sorby, I had an interview, and he had signed the letter of response and what I needed to do to have an interview.
I like it.
Today's a little different, but you've always, like you guys are doing, are first impressions at everything, whether it's with a client, a model, how we say, how we talk, how we walk. I think it's really, really important to keep that in mind about who you want to be, where you want to be, and how you want people to perceive you. Am I going on too much?
No.
Okay. So anyway,
oh my God, look at me.
I was just gobsmacked that at that time I got a letter, and there was this letter with Trevor's font on it, and it was signed, and so I had to do 3 haircuts. And again, at that time, I didn't really quite know why I need to do those specific haircuts. Well, of course I know now. The 3 haircuts were layering, 1 length, and graduation. 3 of the most important principles of cutting hair that if you understand will navigate you through any haircut and any philosophy of cutting hair that you will ever face in your life. Now, dressing hair, coloring hair, and everything else has similar principles. So I had to bring 3 models, I had to get on the train. I mean, keep in mind, I was kind of a bit green because I was in Birmingham, you know, I was a little shy, like most of us. I think a lot of people in our business are actually quite shy. But when you press the button, right, guys, you switch on. Yeah. It's just like
when we get the scissors or the color brush in our hands, then we come into our own, don't we?
Yes.
So I know more.
And that's where we let our work do the walking and the talking. So anyway, he went through this haircut, and oh my God, I literally had, my fingers had more cuts on than I think probably anybody that had been, you know, in a road accident. I swear there was blood coming out and I was trying to be so discreet, but it was quite obvious I was like, you know, in a mess. You know, you could see that I could, you know, attempt to do what needed to be done. Now, was it at his level? Of course not. So he agreed, thankfully, that he would, you know, go through a training program, blah, blah, blah. And that resulted really in what we call VARDering, a training program that could last 2 to 4, 6 months if Trevor felt it was worthy. And what you do is you have to go get models every day. You get specific models based on if you're doing 1 lengths, layers, graduation. You're evaluated on every single model. And I can remember the evaluation sheet. I think it had 5 things: your technical skills, your creative skills, your suitability, overall look, and the finish. In other words, your blow drying and how you finished it off. And you were evaluated from 0 to 10 on everything. Each one, there should be improvement, because if not, you're not growing. So anyway, long story short, to accumulate all that together, you then had to do a final test. And I think the final test is 12 models that had to have makeup on, some kind of wardrobe, some kind of collection or a conceptual vision about what it was. And you had to do every single haircut that is an extension of 1 length, layer, and graduation. So you did round crop, square crop, an A-line Bob, a graduated Bob, whatever, Firefly, you name it. Of course, Trevor was a creative director at Vidal Sassoon, created the famous wedge, was very well known for scrunch drying, as well as celebrities, Annie Lennox, Boy George, that were in there outside that salon, like it was like MTV. It was amazing.
Wow, that's awesome.
The funny thing is, and I didn't realize it at that time, but you know, the day of the actual test was always on a Friday. It was sort of Friday night. I was like, okay, well, that's a bit weird. Why is it always on a Friday? Well, it's either hiring.
Because we had nothing to do on a Friday night.
It was either hiring, you're getting hired, or you were getting fired.
Yeah.
Oh, love that. Let me write that down.
It was a bit like the Trump show, you know, when he was doing The Apprentice. You know, you're either hired or you're fired.
Yep. And,
I so felt for you guys.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is, but I understand now, and I you know, we'll probably talk a little bit more later about, you know, just Trevor's vision, but your vision too, and everybody else's vision. You've got to have your standards. You've got to have, you know, I don't think you need to be mean about it. We're going to talk about that later on. Just because you have high standards doesn't mean you need to be arrogant. It doesn't need to mean you're rude and so forth and treat people in a mean way. It just means you're very clear about what you want. If you're the Ritz Hotel and you drop your standards, you're no longer the Ritz Hotel. Yeah. If you're Alexander McQueen or, you know, Jean-Paul Gaultier or, you know, John Galliano designing, you know, for Maison Margiela, and you drop your standards, you no longer have that. You have that helm of who you are and what you are. So I then worked in the salon. The salon wasn't a huge salon, but it had the most amazing energy. It was in Covent Garden. For those of you not Covent Garden is the hub of everything. Cool bars, you know, great clothes shops, good-looking people, rich people, poor people. It's the melting pot of what is cool in London. It still is today. So I worked in the salon, and then Trevor had an academy in the prestigious Savile Row. And Savile Row was very famous for its tailors, not only in the 50s, the 60s, it is even today. You know, the Beatles would go there, you know, all these famous stars would go get their clothes designed by these master tailors. Well,
Really?
Yeah, this beautiful location that Trevor had was bi-level. You could see into it and you could see below it. And it was really the creme de la creme. There was Allen International, there was Tony and Guy, there was Vidal Sassoon, all, you know, in the same kind of area. But there was a certain hairdresser that went to the academy. It was the creme de la creme of the world. Yes. And it wasn't just, I mean, not that I'm saying that we also had other people that, you know, were on different programs, but it was who he attracted, which was really quite fascinating. And the willingness for those big players, big hairdressers that own big salons that were notoriously well known in their countries to come and learn from Trevor and the team. Chris was there, of course. That's where I met Chris, our relation. Lovely Chris, and, you know, changed my world. And so did Trevor, and so did Vivian McKinder and Eugene Solomon and Antwerp Binders. I mean, the list goes on. All of these, Ruth Roach, you know, these were all people that were building their career and also developing themselves. But that was all nurtured through Trevor's direction. And he knew what he wanted, and that's what he needed to have to maintain the level of work that he does. And he still, I believe, implements that today.
Oh, yeah. And he never for 1 second did he dilute. And I have a lot of respect for him doing that. I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second, Damien. Laura McKinley, we love seeing your face, but would you mind turning off your camera? Because this is a recording. Thank you.
Yay. Hi, Laura.
How come I didn't see that, Chris?
I don't know, but maybe Laura's gone out to dinner because she's not turning her camera off.
Well, it's off on my screen. Is she still there?
Maybe for some reason it's on mine. Anyway, Damien, what's the worst job you've ever done?
I suppose if I look at it now that I'm maturer, I mean, I go back to when I was a kid, you know, from the age of 10, you know, it was a survival mode that I was raised in, and through the way that I was raised. I won't talk about that too much, but it wasn't bad or negative, but I would have done everything. I mean, I cleaned toilets. I was a cleaner. I swept the streets. I did whatever I needed to do to put money in my pocket that allowed me to grow and develop and invest that into where I see myself. There's always an exit plan to my life. Where do I want to be? How do I get there? And how can I get there effectively without being distracted? So I don't think there is any bad jobs. I think from that, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about achieving things. And in other words, you asked me to do that, I did it. So to me, that's goal orientated. Or if you asked me to cut a perfect bob to your jaw and perfectly all the way around, that I can do that. So,
Do you think, Damien, do you think that was unique to your attitude towards work, or do you think it was the era that we were being raised in?
a bit of both, But I think there are people like, my attitude today. I just think there's just a different culture. I mean, today's a whole different, world that we live in. We live in it's fast. It's, everybody wants to grow very, very quickly, but sometimes so quickly, they don't know where they're going to or where they're running to or why they're doing it. They just feel they're on this machine, this wheel. But to me, I've always been that way. And no matter what, even today, no matter if I'm doing a client, like I work in a salon like everybody else, I want to make sure I give them the best. And it's just having those core values that I believe that make me get out of bed. I want to be with people that I admire. I want to make sure that I give my best. I want to be happy. I spent so many years of my life, or days, I should say, not years, where I was miserable because I was making myself miserable rather than, stop the attitude or, rethink, pause, rewind, and let's do that all again with a happier, stronger energy. It's about I can do versus, oh, I'm not sure. And that can be quite British, actually. I mean, what I've learned about living in America is this confidence that allows you to grow and develop. In England, in the UK, it's slightly different. We're a little bit, well, I'm speaking on my behalf, a little bit more reserved. Well, I may not get that. I may not do that. So maybe I won't bother doing it. In America, it's like, I can do that. Even if I can't right now, I'm going to find a way of doing it. And that to me has been all through my hairdressing career. But like you and a lot of people watching, sometimes you don't see where you started or, your growth. Sometimes we're always looking. So it's good to look back and look at where your goals or where your growth is and knowing where you can fine tune and move on.
Yeah, and celebrate your wins.
Yeah.
That's crucial, I think, to our growth.
I think that's a really important point. And I think that actually was a little bit maybe in my 30s is knowing when you've done a good job and you've really excelled and you're not arrogant and rude and pompous about it. You've done a really good job and you've earned that, dinner, that cocktail or that recognition from your boss, right? And know on the other side that you're not doing well. So it's all about, that kind of thing. It can be ups and downs. I think as I've kind of matured, it's a bit more cruising, and I think that's really important.
Damien, you are one of the most humble people that I know, and I think humbleness, humility, it goes a long, long way in our industry. Beautiful.
I do, because I think at the end of the day, people are people, no matter what country you live in or where you are. I mean, I've mixed with politicians, I've mixed with mega celebrities, I've been in their houses. I came from really poor upbringings, but I didn't know that when I was being raised. I was happy because I had holes in my shoes, didn't make me any different. I mean, my friends may have picked on me, but it's the same kind of thing. Just because life presents you with, designer clothes, which, I can afford now, they don't actually appeal to me at all. Because now I can afford to buy them. Part of the game was that I wanted them.
The truth? Yeah.
Just like a car, I wanted a car. I don't have a car. I have no desire to own a car. But anyway, back to being humble. I think it's a quality that for me is really endearing. I think it's beautiful. And I think today a lot of people can see where people are being fake. They're not being real. And in the world that we live in with sometimes, world being very quick with a lot of social media, sometimes it's hard to realize which is which and sometimes what is what. But good for those, at the end of the day, it's up to you, it's up to me, it's up to everybody that's watching to know how they want to be received. I don't want people to think that, oh, Damien's a pushover or whatever, but I want to be spoken of in a nice way. And I expect the same for other people.
I think that's going to happen, Damien. You got my mind. My mind right now is buzzing in a lot of different directions. So what I want to share with you is that from a student standpoint or a young stylist that wants to get into the world of seeing your photos, because your photos are amazing, right? What does it... and I say this all the time, and I know Chris has heard me say this, it doesn't frustrate me, but for the students, it's easier for them to do unicorn color than it is for them to do a pristine, precision, beautiful shape of a cut. So they want to avoid that because it's scary. They cut their fingers, and they use it as a bad excuse. And I'm going to use my associate right now. If I give him a very sharp, A-line bob to work on, it'll take him about 2.5 hours to prepare, because he'll find all the reasons in the world. Oh, there's more towels I have to do. Or there's just, I'm working on trying to think of, they don't understand this. And I think I need your help. It would be this. If you were going to want to do the Damien looks or the Chris's looks, or even if you wanted to go to Naha, which isn't fluff, you really have to be very sharp on your vision and your idea. What comes first? Is it the color, or are you seeing a constructed architectural shape that you are then going to color? Because they would look at it, I would say, more from their tear sheets are all color. Not that there's anything wrong with color, but I think, I'm always on them to find the right shape first before you start emphasizing color. Do you hear what I'm saying? Could you inspire them a little bit by saying how you feel about what's important first before you get to that Naha photo shoot?
Yeah, I think, really it's kind of going back a little bit to the beginning as such, so to speak. You've got to practice your skill set. Now, if I take my skill set in today's world of editorial or runway or doing Naha or whatever competitions you choose to go in, if my skill set technically is not really good, or it's not polished for my photo shoots and everything else, then everything else falls apart. You cannot build a house with rubber and mush. You could build a house with concrete, wood, metal, and something solid. All the other elements that you build the house and put the house in is your creative parts, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't cook a cake if you don't understand, the formulation, what ingredients to put in it. But if you want to copy a perfect lemon cake, you better know your ingredients, how long it's cooked for, how it's worked at the ingredients, and whatever. If you're doing grandma's, lemon cake, then that's okay. You're loosening it up a bit. It was why I went to Trevor Sorby, and why I learned what I did was to make my skills better, because that changed my life. That one hair show that I went to changed my life. So then you've got your creative side. Everyone's creative. Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone is creative. But to what degree of creativity is tasteful? What degree of creativity is relevant for today? I could do colors that bleed and blend through, or I can do choppy fringes. No problem. I love them. You know why? Because no one can say Damien's not a perfect straight fringe. But if my bob technical supposedly is 100% perfect and it's not, then it isn't. There's no gray areas there. So there's a lot of artistry which is going on everything, with long hair, photographic work, color, cutting, braiding, you name it, in the industry right now. The creativity is off the charts. Now, is that good? Absolutely. However, some of it may not be in the right taste, and some of it is the case of mistakes that need to step back, rewind, and evaluate again. But it's easy for me to say my pictures have got better because I'm working with better people, better models, better wardrobe stylists, people that have grown me. It's not just me. I'm listening to the right people, giving me the right information. I'm listening to people rather than digesting 30 average people that are going to poison my brain. And I use that word.
Or the people that brown nose you, as they say in America, and they tell you how fabulous you are, and because you've got a name and all of that. And I think you're so right, Damien, to surround yourself by people that you can help each other grow, because you respect each other. And you trust each other.
Yeah.
So
you only learn. I mean, you wouldn't want to be, that was a good friend of mine who was, when I was going back to my younger days of hairdressing, I asked him for some advice and he says, here's 3 tips. Stop hanging around with loser hairdressers. You're looking and listening to people who are using the wrong techniques and maybe not the best. And you need to surround yourself with people that are much, much, much better with you. Just choose 2 or 3 people in your life that will mentor you and grow. And that's what happened.
was it Sam Bricado that said that to you?
That's Sam, yeah.
Now, wait a minute. Why would you bring him up? Are you guys
Oh,
besties?
because I know a few things.
Oh.
Good old Sam. I love Sam. I work in at Sam's salon on a Friday and Saturday, and talking about culture and training and all of that. He's had very few people leave his business. Him and his wife absolutely care and love about everybody. And I could choose to work in many salons, but I chose him, and I've been there at least 4 years, and I think he's brilliant. Again, there are not many great salons. There are a lot of average salons around the world in every country, but there are very few great ones. So I'd rather be an assistant in a great one than be a top stylist in one that isn't so good.
Whoa.
So true. That is so true.
So back to the Naha thing, absolutely. I mean, what we can do is with today's technology, you can use your camera to start documenting your work and seeing how it is. A lot of people think you can really use this to grow your career, not just on Instagram and everything else, but personally. Whenever I'm doing a shoot, I will shoot it on this and test it to see if my work is reflecting what's in my head. I can see the silhouette, I can see the texture. Does it have any wow? Do I need to pull it apart? And by the way, there are many times, and it will happen again tomorrow, where I've pulled it apart and thrown it in the bin and washed the hair and stuff. Yeah.
And then 2 days later, you dig into the bin and you're like, hang on a minute, that is kind of cool now. It's been in the bin a couple of days.
Well, that's it. I mean, you can look at something on an inspiration in a magazine, or look, your inspiration board, and that day you're, woo, I've nailed it. The next day you're thinking, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
After you're like, I really, really got clarity here about what I'm going to do. I'm going to run with it. And that's called trusting your instinct. Yep. Your signature to your work, your signature to who you are. And it's important to have that. But to kind of go back to that big question that you had, it's really, don't be shy of going in for that, but listen to the messages. It's really having a great skill set, because if you don't have good application of color, you don't have good cutting skills, or you don't have good blow drying and finishing skill, which is a whole nother level, and you don't know history of hair, that's really important. If somebody says, I want a 20s look with an 80s vibe, but I want it to look futuristic, what would that mean to you? I don't know. I'd have to research. But things not come into your mind. If you don't know what's been done in hairdressing in the past, then it's very difficult to know where you're going to make it in the future. I've never reinvented anything. I haven't created a haircut like Trevor did, or Vidal Sassoon, or certain iconic head, Raymond, I've copied at times, and I've mimicked things, and I've made them my own, because I've been learning, but when I go into a studio, if somebody wants the ponytail or finger waves or whatever, I need to be able to make sure I deliver it. So it's the skill, it's the technique.
Can I ask you guys something, not to interrupt? Who created the actual wedge? Who was the creator to capture on the document? Who was the actual creator of the wedge? Was it Sassoon?
It was Trevor. No, it was Trevor while he was working at Sassoon's, and it was actually a mistake that turned good. Damien, do you want to explain it, or should I explain it?
No, I believe, hopefully I got the story absolutely from what I know historically with hair, but facts-wise. Trevor, like you're saying, was a creative director at that time at Vidal Sassoon, and then basically he created the wedge. It is a band of graduation that goes all the way around the perimeter and goes into a point at the back of the hair, and has another couple of points on the hairline, the way the hair naturally grows. Yeah. But what people don't realize is that it was a mistake. The model's hair, I believe, was so thick that Trevor was applying a lot of tension with the hair to create, a very structured line. Yep. Now, when the hair blow dried, there was a band of graduation that had been created that he really didn't want. But then with a brush, the hair was brushed backwards and therefore created this three-dimensional shape, which then became a wedge.
Yes.
Because you can graduate minimally, you can have a lot of graduation. There's many forms of graduation.
Of course. Of course.
Brilliant shape.
This is really interesting. So who cut Dorothy?
I don't
Dorothy
know.
Hamill, that was Leonard, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I think it was Leonard.
I thought it was Dorothy that actually made the wedge famous.
Well, actually, so when Trevor did the wedge, it was the very first double-page spread of a haircut in Vogue magazine.
Oh
That's
my God!
never been done before or since. At the time, wasn't a name like Dorothy Hamill. I think it was then Dorothy Hamill that brought it into the eye of the world. But no, it was Trevor.
Another reference that's similar to that is everybody's creating a new shag. I mean, you know, it's a shag comes from the 60s, 70s, and there's different evolutions, but there are certain iconic hairdressers that really created that kind of look, which is all kind of layered through, whimsical, choppy textured. But today, everybody claims they've created something that's new. If they look at history, it's
who
really
do you
not
think
that
created?
different.
I mean, the shag. The shag
and
was
that, again, is really important.
The shag was first put on who? Twiggy? No, that was a pixie, right?
You're breaking up, Joseph, so we're not understanding what you're saying. Say that again.
Am I sounding kind of bizarre right now?
Yeah, you're frozen.
Yes, a little bit, but that's
freezing.
Nice. We like it. We like it that way.
All right. Yeah. It keeps
so what
me
were you
quiet.
saying about the shag?
The shag was then also for history's sake. Am I frozen or am I here?
No, you're good.
You're here, but you kind of keep freezing.
I don't know why that is. Anyway, the shag. Who created the shag? That look.
I think that was John Sahag, wasn't it, Damien?
No, I think it goes back. You see, this is a test now. You caught me off guard. Normally, I'm very articulate about who did what. But I think it kind of goes back even further than that. But another parallel is, you know, Louise Brooks in the 1920s had a box bob. You know, the Egyptians had bobs. There's all different kind of references, you know, a guy's little Greek haircut that has the waves all coming forward. So I think people have reinvented and made it relevant for people wearing it every day. They've added a technique that people can duplicate and copy. That's what's really important. That's the learning lessons, I think, from history.
And you know, we have to thank the hairdressers like Vidal and Trevor and so on, and you know, Redkin, their education, Weller, so on, because they have enabled hairdressers to be able to learn very much quicker because they've developed methods and they've developed systems.
Oh,
and
is that how that works?
really what has made it easier. Whereas way back in the day, you had to try and decipher it yourself just from a picture, which might just be a, you know, a profile shot, for example. So it's so much easier these days, but you got to be curious.
Great point, because if you don't have a system, you don't have a philosophy. If you don't have a philosophy, you can't have a culture. If you don't have a culture, a philosophy, or a vision, you're lost. And that's what happens. And sometimes, you know, it could be in a salon. You've got a salon that's owned. Yeah, there's a team of people, but they're all doing so different styles of work that they have nothing in common. Yeah. So they're almost like they're going down different avenues in a highway. They're not going down in a bus altogether. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to be limited. It's just called your philosophy. If you work at Dior or Prada, you know how to sew their kind of fabric. If you're at Yves Saint Laurent, they will have their signature. They may be very similar, but they're distinctly different because they're different in their brands and their culture, and they don't give up on that. So hair's very, very similar to that. But in today's world, we live in a world where people grow quicker, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think you need to have an apprenticeship that goes on for years and years and years. I think, you know, we've got to keep our staff motivated. Shampooing is part of being an assistant, and cleaning. But if it's the most important thing of a project that they're doing from day to day, they're not learning.
No, no. And then they end up checking out, and they leave the industry, which is tragic.
Yeah, yeah. But I know that's, you know,
Sorry,
there are a lot of good salons that, you know, are adapting that. Of course, they've got to do those jobs. But in the other hand, they are accelerating their training program, so they feel inspired to be a great hairdresser, you know. Maybe 20 people might start on an apprenticeship program, maybe 3 or 4 might even complete it at the end of the day. But that's life. That's what makes you, what you're doing today, and your viewers and everybody watching and further educating themselves unique and different. Because those who don't will simply get left behind. And what they learned 5 years ago or yesterday will not see them through to tomorrow. We have to keep evolving.
So in your opinion, even though you've been doing hair as long as you have, it's still vital for you to be learning today, tomorrow, and the next day?
Absolutely. Okay, so if I look at the way that I was trained 5, 10, 20 years ago, if you look at the techniques that a lot of clients might want today, I've got to be able to adapt that. I still hone in to what I've learned and what's instilled in me because I think it's a great system, but I've got to make it relevant for today. I mean, you know, the bobs that you cut in the 60s and the 70s may not be reproduced identically today because they might look a little old-fashioned. So your graduation might sit flatter. Maybe your graduation is point cut. Maybe your bob is a little serrated on the edges, but it's still perfectly serrated and it's still perfectly balanced. It's not bodged up and chopped up. So there's still things in there that make us keep fresh. And I think it's really important because it's just like exercising your mind. The more you stretch your mind, the more the mind can think outside the box and think of bigger things. If you want a great body, you go to the gym, right? Mm-hmm. You lead a healthy lifestyle. If you don't, then we have a different body shape. But there's nothing wrong with what body shape you want. It's what you want with your career and your life.
Sure, absolutely.
Wow, so that was beautiful.
Who will play you in the film of your life?
Oh, nobody. Nobody would.
You can't say nobody.
I can't say. I don't know.
Denzel Washington? I mean, who would it be?
Yeah, I don't know. Who would it be? Oh, Jesus, you stumped me there. Sean Connery. It'd have to be smooth.
Oh,
I know he's, you know, not quite what he was, and he's a very, very clever man. Just recently celebrated his birthday. I think he's in 90 or something. I can't remember. Yeah.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Somebody. Hopefully that would be stylish. Not that I'm stylish. I try to be stylish.
Darling, you're just the epitome of sophistication.
No, you see, it's interesting how. I mean, it's interesting how we all see ourselves, right? And for like a lot of, you know, people have just joined the industry, you're at beauty school, and it's interesting how people, when you're doing your consultation, when you walk into a room, how you handle situations, that's what people see. And they make judgment on that, or they make a decision of whether they're going to allow you to do whatever they want to do to your hair. So confidence is important, right? And again, kind of knowing what we're worth and what we do. But I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And as I've got older, I've stayed well away from the things I'm not good at. And the things that I don't enjoy just get kicked to the curb. Because if I'm not enjoying it, then what's the point of doing it?
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Man.
The older I get, the more I realize I know nothing.
True. You know, it's a bit like you have so much information that, you know, in your hands and your brain that sometimes, you feel like you're going back to school again, right? But that's why it's always important to stay fresh. And you can see that with men and women when they're wearing a jacket or a makeup that they wore in their 20s. It doesn't quite work in your 60s. You have to adapt it, right?
Not if you've got the beer belly that goes with it. No.
Well, easy.
I've got one. I think I've got a couple. But what you have to do, you have to adapt, and it's called taste, right? It's called style.
Damien, Damien, I want to ask you something. I love fashion, and I'm sure you worked on a lot of amazing runways, right? A lot of amazing runways. Did you ever, I want to ask you if you ever worked with Alexander McQueen, but I want to ask also, what was your most, your favoritist, is that even a word, for God's sake?
No.
What is your favoritist fashion designer that you got to create looks for a runway show?
Well, I haven't had, you know, a lot of my, you know, I gave up that quite a long time ago, the runway. I found that the only, I don't want to sound like a snob here, and you know, about what I
You're
like.
not. You're
But
not.
just being clear, London to me is very unique in that sense, and you know, Paris, the couture shows. As in other parts of the world, I just think they're diluted versions of something that's stronger elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that the most important thing, if you're talking about, I haven't done anything for this guy, but meet John Galliano when he was at Dior, and John Galliano now working with Mason Margiela, I think is incredible. I just love his brain. And of course, the same names keep coming up. Alexander McQueen is just the pure quintessential, you know, British attitude to how mixing things up. The British don't mind looking silly and a little bit eccentric and, you know, having things that people may comment on their clothes. And we don't take it personally either. We're taking it with a bit of fun and humor.
Sure.
Vivienne Westwood, again, is another one. But those are, to me, you know, I mean, I could go on about different things regarding designers. But again, there's a certain energy that is required when you're doing fashion shows. I find I enjoyed it when I did it, but today I'm just not into that anymore. It can be a lot of energy in like a very short amount of hours. That's literally like you're on medication, you're on another planet. And then all of a sudden, when it's all over,
the medication when you're done. Oh.
Yeah, you pull the plug, everyone leaves and writes whatever they've done, and it's usually successful. But I need something else than that. But they're interesting because you get to see the rawness of something, and the most important thing is tapping into what a designer is designing, why they are. Is it because society's saying that? Is it because they're saying what women and men should be wearing? Is it because they're just turning everything upside down?
Sure.
It's also a pattern in fashion, you know.
Did you, I'm sorry, Chris. I have to ask him this. Did you ever get to meet in your life my all-time favorite crush, Linda Evangelista?
Yeah, I've seen her. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I was again at that time. I've never done her hair. I've seen her. You know, Karen Mulder. You know, Linda, Naomi, Claudia. You know, all of these girls that, you know, were called the supermodels, wouldn't get out of bed for, what was it, 10 grand a day?
Exactly.
Well, I'll get out of bed for $10.
Yeah.
But they were, you know, the iconic things. And I remember seeing on the scene, whatever, a lot of these girls that, you know, were basically the supermodel. And it was interesting. Aesthetically, their face and their body and everything else, proportion-wise, was perfect. You did turn around and you did go, wow, that is a supermodel. But that doesn't apply today because the world doesn't want that supermodel, well, they were just born with it. They didn't have cosmetic surgery at that time. They were just born beautiful, you know?
Yeah.
And then a lot of my models have got, you know, beautiful full lips. Everybody thinks they haven't plumped up. No, they don't. They've just got great lips.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the supermodel time. And today the world has changed so much.
Yeah.
And, you know, the supermodel will come out for a Chanel watch or a fragrance bottle of some description. But the world needs a different kind of role model, a different body shape, different things that, you know, is still aspirational and inspirational, but I think a bit more reality driven, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's nice. I do miss those wow moments of, you know, seeing something on stage, or you open up a magazine, it's so ridiculous that it's brilliant. Yeah. And who cares if anyone's going to wear it? They'll make other ready to wear clothes from their line, you know. So that's what's important. I think they are igniting. Christian Dior buyout will know who their clients are. The same with Prada, and the same with, you know, or Tom Ford. Mm-hmm. Tom Ford is Tom Ford. He knows very clearly who's buying his clothes, and the women love everything that Tom does. So it's all about those kind of things, which to me, kind of what we talked about earlier, brings it back into hair and how you as a hairdresser can kind of have that signature to work. Why do people come to you? Because you may not be the best haircutter, you may not be the best at this, but they come to you for different reasons. Maybe it's the haircut, maybe you're a bride professional, but it's knowing what you're worth and knowing how you can get that client to look 10 times better. And when she walks out the salon, she feels beautiful, not just externally, but internally. I know it sounds a bit marketing wise, but it's true. I think you can empower people from an amazing haircut. And lately, with what's going on with the world that we live in, it's more important now than ever.
Yeah.
You've got to know your stuff. You've got to know your techniques. You've got to know what looks good on somebody, and you've got to adapt it for that. My clients do not want the same hair on every single person. Some might have it. They may not know that, but it will be tweaked, but it will be different. My clients come to me, and most people around the world, because they're going to you for something special and something different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you think, talking about the time we're living in with COVID and all of that, do you feel now that your clients that have been coming in since you've reopened, has their attitude changed at all, or are they fearful, or what kind of vibe are you getting from them?
The people that have been coming into the salon, although it's been very mixed, and we can talk about that in a bit more detail. Clients that are coming into the salon are just, they're amazing. They're amazing anyway. I don't have pains of a client. I don't look in my column and go, I don't like that woman. No matter how much I do to her hair, she's never happy. She keeps coming back to me. I get rid of them. Yeah. Yeah. And anybody that are not in my, realm of what I want to do with hair. And by the way, I've got to make sure I've earned a living and make them feel beautiful. I get rid of them. When I was 20 and 30, I used to bend over and give them everything. And at the end of the day, I had no control over my business. So that's a food for thought. But back to the clients. Clients coming in, they're great energy, they're walking into a very safe environment. And without going too much into precautions of what we need for today, it's important we set that as standard. And I know the salon that I work in, San Bricado in Soho, in a premier address in Worcester Street, where you've got Chanel, Gucci on your street where your salon is, you need to have your A game, and they do. So the clients have been coming in there very happy. What we've been doing, very grateful, tipping very generously, by the way, very generously. But then you've got your other clients who have been doing a lot of work. They're reporting into the office. They don't need to get made up. They may have a child or two. So they're going from the bedroom, woke up, shower, to the computer, and they have no reason, unless they're doing a Zoom, where they might make up this part, but they've got no clothes on and they've got the pajamas on at the bottom. So they have not returned to the salon yet. And that could be, I think a lot of my clients have, I've gone so far, I really don't care anymore. In fact, my gray hair, I'm going to grow it out. That's one thing. Then I think there's a portion of people that are visiting right now. They can see we're running the business successfully. It's safe. It's okay. It's no worries there. They are coming back. Then there's the others, which I think they're frightened. And I think they're frightened of coming into a situation where it may be unsafe. It could be their age, it could be a medical condition, and so forth. A lot of these people are probably, they've gone home to their second homes, or if they're a younger kid or in a career in New York, they've gone back to their parents where they hang out safely, right? I would. So it's a dilemma that we're all facing, but the bottom line is we have to shine. We have to be positive like we've never, ever done before. We have to give the best haircut, best color, best experience that they've ever had in their life. And that's what I do every single client. And I also get people to do a review, a Yelp review, or do something that will help build the business and keep things going. And they're not shy of doing that, and they support them. But I really make sure that I give more than 100% because they deserve it, because they pay my bills. And without them, I have nothing.
Yeah, good answer. Very good answer, young man.
Totally.
I'm just speechless at this point. I could just keep talking to you for 3 hours, but I probably will end up now asking if we could be like text message friends so that we can just kind of talk back and forth about some really cool stuff in life and keep both of us, up. But what you said is true about the client. And you know what, Chris, I want to share this with you because this comes from several of my doctors that have said to me, because of how high risk that I was through all this, that the salon industry is also, as Damien said before, they're on the front line. When we opened up, we became on the front line as well because we were exposing ourselves. But he said one of the most safe places a client could go is a place that you get your temperature checked, hand sanitation when you walk in, a mask is on, and your hair is always washed. And we always have gloves on when we're doing color. He goes, that's almost like a practice as what my nurse and I do in the hospital. So he's always reassured me that our salon is one of the safer places to actually, what am I thinking? Go to, you know, have your service done.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's true. Some of my youngest stylists are getting the biggest tips because the client is supporting them for the time they were gone.
Oh.
It's just so cool. And I have something funny to say. I've got clients coming back now after like the second round, and I'm starting to call this particular hair the pandemic tail. Because remember in the 1980s when there was this tail?
The
Remember?
mullet.
Right. Now,
Mullet.
if you don't cut really well around that damn thing that goes around their ear, they come in the next time, they're like, what is this that I have right here? What is this? And it's the pandemic tail that got caught. It didn't get cut at their last.
I love it.
That is funny.
Oh,
Well, it's happened twice.
yeah.
And it's somewhat embarrassing, but I just always just do a little bit of that. Tuck it in there. Just tuck it in there. Well, you know
Damien,
what?
what's been your most...
Go ahead,
I'm
Chris.
going to ask Damien a question. What's been your most embarrassing moment in your career?
I complained. You know, somebody complaining about their hair. Yeah. And well, there's a couple that come to mind, but I'll rewind right back to when I was as a young stylist in Birmingham, in the salon, and perming was popular. It was then Farrah Fawcett. You literally had perm after perm after perm after perm. So there was a problem. The salon was having a problem where a lot of the backs of the hair were basically going straight. So what it was, the assistants weren't neutralizing the hair properly.
Right.
They were taking shortcuts, they weren't rinsing it and doing it properly. And there was one girl, and I remember saying, we were in the staff room, we're eating our ham sandwiches and what we are, down her throat, you know, because we were doing our clients. And she was
Smoking at the same time, yeah.
Yeah, doing everything, you know. And she was like, oh God, I've got like 3 reperms in, you know, they got all straight at the back. And I, as a smug little 19 or 20-year-old is what it was, I turned around and said, well, actually, I haven't had any problems at all. Carried on eating my sandwich, you know, giggling to myself inside, but trying to look cool. Well, lo and behold, the next day I had 5. Yes, it's a true story. And I vow from that time, I will never make judgment or make comments like that about anyone else's work, because karma's a bitch and it can, you know, come round to you.
Yes.
But, you know, I've had, I suppose, the normal amount of complaints that I think any hairdresser would have, you know, in their career. I think it's nothing to be ashamed of, although it's not a thing that I, you know, kind of think, oh, great, I've got a complaint in today. Let's crack open a bottle of champagne. So it's just learning lessons, and often it can be miscommunication. And a few, you know, times where I wasn't on my game, you know, I needed to, you know, be able to get that perfect, and it should be. If one side's a little bit long or a little bit out of it, or it wasn't quite right, it needs to be. So there's a learning lesson in that, and it could happen tomorrow. It's when you stop and you're not on your guard and you're not performing constantly, that's when things slip in. Because everyone can be average.
Yeah.
Everyone can be brilliant. The people that are brilliant and the people that are special deliver more in life. They have this energy and dynamics to give more than what is average. And they deserve to be paid better, they deserve to grow better, and they deserve to fly, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what we need in the world today. A little bit of love, you know, with all these things that are going on, and people be a little bit more considerate. We can't have what we all want. We've got to be considerate about what is right for everybody. And my opinion may not be good for everybody. I'm willing to give that up for the will of making the world a better place. Just like wearing a mask.
That's why we love you.
Oh.
Yep, I wanna throw this at you in closing now, right?
Absolutely.
Because 120 years from now, the modern day beauty school is going out and digging around, and they find a time capsule, and it's a hairdresser capsule, and you're in it. Your name is in it. And how would you like them? What would you like them to read about you? Just real briefly, a sentence or two of what maybe a footprint you left behind, or what would they want? What would you want them to know about you?
Caring, funny, I'm a team player. I don't care. It's not always about me. Far from the truth. I know what I need to feed my thing, but a team player is really important. And most of all, just spend a little bit of love and enjoy it, because that will radiate. You'll learn more, you'll grow more, you'll be a better person, a better hairdresser, and that's all you need. You don't need anything else. The rest is just will come, and that is to me the icing on the cake.
Damien, do me a favor. You were fantastic. I wrote down so many things that are that truly will be life-changing to the youth in our industry. You should feel so proud of what you've said, honestly, is going to really change them. I know it will, when they hear some of the truth that you said about what they need to really know first. Also, I know, but I don't know Sam really well, and I've reached out to Sam to see if he would actually be a part of iConixxx, and I just think he thinks I'm a stalker. If you could just, if you could do me a favor, and my wife, he cut my wife's hair like 110 years ago, and she doesn't stop talking about him. But that's besides the point. If you could just reach out
today, Joseph. I messaged him today. I messaged him today.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, let's see.
Well, I'm sure he's a lovely guy and has a lot of great information.
I really want us to talk to him.
Yeah,
I think he'd be great on here.
Yeah,
so if you could help us out, that would be fantastic. Chris, stay on that for me, would you please?
Absolutely.
All right.
And Damien, once again, from the bottom of my heart, I absolutely love you. And I know the gifts that you've given to the people that are going to see this video are just straight from your heart. And you haven't had an easy life. I know that. And it's so valuable what you've shared with them. And thank you for your humbleness, and thank you for being you. We love you.
Thank you, Joseph and Chris. The pleasure was all mine. It was a pleasure. A really easy, lovely, delightful conversation that just flowed beautifully. And that's what life's about.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Surround yourself with people that bring that. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Damien.
Thank you for all that you've done. I've watched them all. They're all wonderful.
You have earned the right, Damien, to walk around proudly with the iConixxx t-shirt. You just got to let me know what size.
We haven't made yet.
Oh, cool. Well, maybe it might be on the larger size. Normally a bit smaller, but during
we'll text you, we'll do email.
We'll have dinner when Andy and I are in New York next month.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Damien. You were great.
Thank you for doing
You're coming back.
things.